Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friday. I think I already used up my updates, and honestly, I wasn't prepared anyway for obvious reasons. So, but questions, I will tell you a couple of quick things is that definitely the COVID wave is upon us. I've had in the last week so many patients calling me. So I say, and interestingly, most patients get it in a least predictable way. You know, a lot of my patients are very careful. They're taking care of precautions, and then it hits you. So like you just can't really, and it's not just patients. I just hear a lot of stories. So I'm basically saying, watch out. But the good news, again, nobody's getting sick enough, so to speak, that everybody is recovering. Again, the long COVID still concerned and scary. Those of you who've been following know we had a pretty good turnout on our long COVID open house last Saturday. So we are marching forward to collaborate with GW, speech, cognitive, rehab, pulmonary, and neuro in research. So we're also going to do a little bit of research. There's an ongoing research project that's already running, so we'll figure out how to be part of it. And we're also going to start groups. So the groups for long COVID is going to be very low cost just by the nature of it. And that'll probably start even before the end of the summer, probably in a month or so. That's all I have. You know the drill. Questions in the chat. If you absolutely must speak your question, unmute yourself. We have, say 5 minutes. No, let's just do 3 questions. How about that? And then if we have more questions, maybe we can do them before James takes to give Nyle time. Yes, long COVID open house is online on my YouTube channel. I'll put the link in there. Any other? Okay, is there any change in the symptoms that may indicate COVID infection with the current variants? Would you kindly repeat or share by email the protocol to keep strong and avoid infection? Okay, first part of this question, yes. It seems like this variant, as I mentioned before, goes less to the lungs, more to the upper respiratory tract. So we don't get a lot of people with a very serious systemic concerns, meaning the lung concerns. Like they may get bronchitis, but it's totally different from what we've seen before. It's much milder. People get more of a sore throat and sinus symptoms. That's one big change. The second big change, a lot more psychological symptoms and a kind of a brain fog. That I would say the second most significant, just from the total sheer volume of cases I've seen. In terms of the protocol, so I actually stopped giving people specific COVID prophylaxis protocols, mostly because I no longer feel it's necessary. I think if you've been optimizing your health overall, I don't, there are actually some patients who are have specific risk factors that I may do it for. So Catherine, I think we should talk about this offline individually. I don't think I'm comfortable giving blank protocol for prophylaxis or for prevention to everybody, but common things everybody already know, basic vitamins, good sleep. If your sleep is imperfect, or even if it's perfect, low dose melatonin is probably a good idea. A couple of milligrams, 1 to 3. So those are the basic things. I'll wait for one more question while I'm putting the link to the channel there. And if there is no questions, how about we just move on to Nyle? Oh, there we go. For those who haven't heard, CDC lifted testing. Yeah. Congratulations to everybody. Less work to do. Judy knows what I just said. Where is the... I'll figure it out. Let's, I don't see any questions, so let's move to Nyle. Thank you, Nyle, for coming, as always. You've been
Hi.
regular. We've seen you here a lot. So what do you
Yeah,
have for us today?
it's nice to see you. I'm glad to see your pup is over there relaxing from the PTSD. Um, Hi, everyone. I actually made a PowerPoint today because I really want to synthesize the information that I'm going to be talking about. I've talked about it kind of bits in my different times here, and I really want you to take away from the fullness of what I'm talking about. So, just a little background about me. My name is Nyle. My pronouns are they, them. I am an occupational therapist and a small business owner. I own Blue Nyle Therapy Services. I'll give you the contact information for that at the end if you ever want to reach out. I specialize in something called fascia. I am a huge fascial nerd. Um, how many of you know what fascia is? If you've been on some of these before and you've seen me talk, I'm sure you do. Good. Okay. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what fascia is and how that's related to pain management. Um, cool. Is it okay if I share my screen and share PowerPoint slides that way, Janet?
Yes, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, I will go ahead and do that here. Okay, that way you'll also get these preserved in the recording. And for accessibility, you can see that there are some subtitles in the bottom so you can read along as well. Can everyone see this okay? Can you just give me a little thumbs up and you can hear me okay? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I am going to give you kind of a fascial specialist's guide to healing. And when I say healing, I'm kind of talking about physical pain because that's the first thing that's usually the first reason why people come and see me is all the, alarms are going off in their body. They're having a lot of physical pain, but that's not all we work on when we end up working together. I think that I do best with a client base who really understands that physical pain and emotional pain are connected. So if that's not a foundational understanding you have now, I hope that is a takeaway that you have from my presentation today. Okay, so first things first, what is fascia? I always forget to give a content warning before I share this slide. This is fascia. This is in vitro fascia, meaning it's the fascia inside of your living, breathing body. These slides are really special in that we don't typically, as practitioners and healthcare providers, we don't typically get to see living, breathing fascia. When we study fascia in the human body, we're typically looking at a cadaver, which is a body that's been donated to science post-mortem or after death. So when you see fascia, when it's no longer living, it looks completely different from fascia in the living human body. So these slides are taken from fascia of the living human. Dr. Jean Gambartu, actually, he's a plastic surgeon. He was able to figure out how to take a scope inside the human body and videotape some living fascia. And you can even see a really cool video of it if you were to search for strolling under the skin on YouTube. There's a great video of him kind of showing all the different ways that fascia works when it's moving. But basically, what fascia is it's connective tissue. It's connective tissue that looks a little bit like a spider web. You can see there in the slides, and it covers every muscle fiber, and every cell. In fact, we're made up of fascia down to the cellular level. In 2016, scientists discovered that the space inside of our body is not just liquid, it's not just empty space, it's actually filled with microscopic webbing, so fibers known as fascia. Fascia surrounds all of our muscles, but it also surrounds all of our organs. When it surrounds the organ, it's known as viscera. It covers our bones. It compartmentalizes each part of our body and separates them from one another and allows them to slide and glide along each other. So we are basically made up of fascia down to the cellular level. it covers and surrounds our brain. And when it covers our brain, it's known as dura mater. So you'll hear all these different labels given to what fascia is, but really at the end of the day, it's all just connective tissue. It looks different depending on what part of the body it's stored. So you can see in the slides there, the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little bit more of like a yellow tint to it. That is fascia that covers adipose tissue or fat tissue. And there's some veins that run through there as well. And then the upper left-hand corner, you can't really see it because it's faded out a little, but when it's more striated like that, that's muscle fascia. So the fascia runs from, surrounds, it's the casing of our brain and runs down to the base of our feet. And it's known as plantar fascia at the base of your feet. So we are from head to toe made up of fascia. Fascia, there's actually this really great quote from Jean Gambart too, who wrote this book called The Architecture of Human Living Fascia. It's this really beautiful book of just tons of slides of fascia. So if you're a nerd for it the way that I am, I highly recommend getting this book. It's kind of like a coffee table book for fascia. One of the quotes in that book is a beautiful quote. He says, "The living matter of our bodies is a unified whole." So when you look at it from that perspective, nothing is separate inside of our body. If we can truly understand the interconnectedness, then we can begin to understand the origins of our pain. And that's really what I want to talk to you all about today. Before I share the next slide, I want to show you kind of how this works. If you have a fascial webbing, and I may have shown this before, what happens is over time, parts of that fascial webbing can get thickened or dense from things like a fall, surgery, or even just everyday wear and tear on the body. So repetitive strain over time can create a thickening in certain parts of the fascial tissue. And when you get a thickening in certain parts of the fascial tissue, what happens is then that tissue starts to get very dense and tight. So that's what's known as a fascial restriction. When you have a fascial restriction in a certain part of the body, it then starts to pull on other parts of the body, causing an overstretching in that part of the body. So I have this great visual here. I'll just unshare my slide for a minute so you can see the full picture. So if you pretend that this is fascia, it's that beautiful open connective tissue, right? And it's covering, let's say it's covering a muscle. At the end of that muscle, you get kind of a thickening that happens. And what happens is it starts to knot or cord. It gets very dense and the tissue starts to stick to each other. So that is what's called fibrosis or fibrotic tissue. So over time, that tissue starts to pull, and this could be from repetitive strain, let's say just, typing, for example. It can also be from, say that you had surgery like an appendectomy, and now you have a scar here. So that scar starts to pull over time as you age, and you can see what's starting to happen to that beautiful uniform tissue. It's starting to stretch, and this is what's known as a length to tension discrepancy. The tension is here, the length is here. So in the work that I do, we work to melt this restriction here and open that webbing back up through slow sustained pressure over time. We open that back up. But then oftentimes what you have is very weak tissue. So you release the tissue, it's still very weak. And that's where the exercise kind of comes in. You start to rebuild strength there, and then you end up with this beautiful organized layer of fascial tissue again. That's the tissue over top, but if that's what's happening to the casing of the muscle, you can imagine what happens to the muscle underneath. It ends up losing its function, and that's how you end up with dysfunction and pain. And apologies if I'm talking too fast. I really am excited for our movement practice today, so I want to make sure we have time to get to that. So that's the physiology of how fascia works. That's what it is. That's how it's That's how it primarily functions. I want you to remember that length to tension discrepancy in everything I'm going to talk to you about today, because it's important to not just focus on the symptoms, but really start to understand how fascia affects our body and causes the symptoms. Later on, it's also going to be really important to understand the structure of fascia itself. So take a mental picture here of these beautiful fascial webbings. I want you to really take note of those wires, the wire-like characteristics there. They are actually hollow on the inside. So fascia is not just like strings that connects our body to one another. It's actually hollow microtubules where inside it contains the enzymes that tell our body what's happening, neuropeptides that tell us if we're safe, if we're in fight, flight, or freeze. You see where I'm going here? So it's not just a connector, it's actually a conductor of information. And that's where the mind-body interplay really comes into place. So if you understand the physiology, the function, and the characteristic of fascia, then you can really start to look at what is it that I'm doing that's causing these tension patterns in my body. I have a really great chart here that I'd like you all to start to take away from today's talk and apply into your everyday life. Ask yourself the question, what am I doing that's causing tension patterns in my body? The most common thing I see with people, and I love that I'm seeing some people start to like sit away from the screen and move. Yes, chronic repetitive strain or stagnation over time creates those tension patterns. Amen. Those tension patterns over time start to apply pressure to the muscles, the structures underneath. It literally becomes like a straitjacket for the human body. So the very first thing you can do is start to look at what are things you're doing in your everyday life. So I'm an occupational therapist by trade. My background is by looking at what are the occupations that are dysfunctional in your life. So this is a key takeaway for you here. What are you doing in your everyday life that's causing chronic repetitive strain? Here's a great chart for you. If you need to take a screenshot of it, you're welcome to do so now. This is going to give you a lot of answers, and then you're going to take this into your everyday life and start to analyze what you're doing. The four most common repetitive strain actions I see people do are things like squinting between the eyes. Where I see them do it is when they're at their computer, when they're concentrating. Dr. Kogan, I see you do it all the time. I'm just going to say, because you're a thinker, right? But what's funny is I also see this in meditation with people. You all, when we are in meditation, there's this line that shows up between the eyes here. So I'm just going to ask you, even right now, to just take your fingers and wipe. Anytime you catch yourself scrunching here between the eyes, just take your fingers and wipe. Take a deep breath and just kind of hit that reset button. Come back away a little bit. Yeah, come into your center. And then I also see it often with driving. Why this matters is because there's fascia behind and between the eyes here in the middle of the skull. There's actually like a mohawk, a line that runs, a fascia that runs through the middle of the skull known as the Foulkes cerebri. And that line of tissue is very affected by what we do between the eyes here. That can eventually create tension in the jaw, tension in the cranium, and it can work its way down into the throat and farther down depending on how long you have a history of doing that. Another common repetitive strain pattern I see is leaning forward. Forward head posture, forward leaning. Yeah, we all do it. And especially if we have carried children gestationally, we get that forward leaning posture. And then from nursing, forward leaning posture, caregiving, really predominant forward leaning posture. So you can see child care is one of the occupations that will cause that. Computer, socializing, we love to be in other people's stuff. So when we're having a conversation, we're like, yeah, we're really in it, right? Which is sweet. but we need to be in our stuff, not in everyone else's stuff. You can still have that same conversation from a more centered place. Cleaning, when we're really just kind of not paying attention to our posture, is often in cleaning. Driving is a big culprit. You'll see her across the board. Computer and driving are very, they're occupational hazards to the body and to repetitive strain. Uneven weight distribution, what that kind of means is like leaning to one side. If you're sitting at a screen, just make sure you're changing which leg you're crossing. You're not always crossing the same leg. Even now, just notice which side of your butt you're maybe sitting more on. That exists because there's a tilt and a rotation in your pelvis. Both uneven weight distribution and hip hiking has to do with the way the pelvis is tilted and rotated. And that happens because we default to the same postural patterns in these different areas. Driving, when you're driving, oftentimes people will lean their weight onto the armrest. I really encourage you to stop doing that and just sit more midline. There's a pedal on the floor for your left foot. Start to use that so that your left foot isn't hiked up while your right foot is hitting the pedal. That really feeds that compensation pattern in your pelvis. And I'm going to talk about why you need to tune into all these things in a moment. So I won't go over too much just for sake of time, but really, take a picture of this, start analyzing in your own day, where are you doing some of these things, and then just catch yourself, hit the reset button. Why this matters is because chronic repetitive strain over time creates a restriction in the fascial tissue, which pulls on the muscle and then creates a symptom somewhere else. So after today, my advice to you is to start to pay attention to what are the symptoms you're having and see if maybe the original source is coming from one of these other places I'm going to tell you now. So when we treat from a fascial perspective, the key takeaway is find the pain, look elsewhere for the source, because fascia is affecting all. So this is another great chart I highly recommend taking a picture of. There's something known as indirect causation. We have the pain or the restriction in one place is causing symptoms in another. It's indirect, but it's causally linked. One is causing the other. So let's actually look at the chart from the right to the left, because I know most of you, this is new information for, and many of you probably have some type of pain symptom, I'm assuming. So think about one of the pain symptoms you have right now. Some examples of pain symptoms are carpal tunnel syndrome, tingling in the fingertips, migraines, low back pain, knee, hip pain, or low back pain, jaw pain, and neck pain. I think I probably covered most everybody, right? So if you can think about one of those symptoms that you have now, I want you to look on the side of the chart that shows the restriction. Most often, if you have a pain symptom, let's use carpal tunnel syndrome, for example, if that is your symptom, the restriction that's causing the pain is in the neck and the shoulder region. Now, some of you may know that already, some of you may not. If you are having tingling and numbness in your fingertips, and you know that the restriction is coming from the neck and the shoulders, and you can go back to the last chart I showed, I bet you know exactly where you're doing that. That's causing the restriction that's leading to the symptoms now. Yes. And that is what fascial therapy is all about. It's about tracing it back, following the breadcrumbs back to what you're doing that's causing it, or what happened the moment in time that it was created, what you need to treat to make it feel better, and then pay attention to the symptom relief. It takes time for the symptoms. Remember that webbing I showed there. Once you release the restrictions, movement, as James is going to show you, movement is the thing that reorganizes the tissue. So you can't just release the restriction. You have to add that flowing movement later. That's what's going to bring flow back into the site of the restriction. I also want to point out another one here that I think is really important. Lee says, motion is lotion. I love that. Low back pain. How many of you have experienced low back pain? Okay. Notice where the restriction often lies. It's in the shoulders. People often don't believe me with this one. And in fact, a lot of times what I get is I get clients who come to me after they've tried many other things that haven't worked because people are treating the symptoms. So by the time they get to me, they know, I'm working on the bigger picture. We're going to trace back the symptoms. In their medical intake, they never share with me the shoulder injury they had when they were a kid. They never share that. Okay. So I'm bringing it to your awareness now just as something to start to think about. Is there stuff in the shoulders? Do you have anywhere in your history something in the shoulders? Because everything is connected. Over time, you're going to start to feel the symptoms of that, even if it doesn't feel related. It's indirect causation. Okay. So what do you do about it from a myofascial release perspective? And I'm just going to mention here, myo means muscle. There are many different types of fascia. Sometimes our restriction is not in the muscle. Sometimes it's in the organ. Organs can actually create that length to tension discrepancy in the body as well. I often see anchors or ties in the stomach that pull on the neck, or in the liver that pull on the shoulder. So just keep that in mind. It's not all muscle, muscle, muscle. But the work that I do, in the way that I teach it, it's a beautiful combination of physical release techniques and energy healing. Time is the key factor here. The first thing we do is we look at your posture and determine where is the fascia pulling, where is the pulling coming from. And I will tell you, it used to be prior to COVID that patients relied heavily on me to show them. I have now created some models and systems that teach patients how to find it themselves. It's what I call the first step of embodiment. I have 4 steps to embodiment. And the first step is assessment. So through movement, we assess where the fascial pulling is happening in the body. Once you identify where that pulling is happening in the body, I teach you self-treatment techniques to melt those restrictions. That's usually through either stretch, which is a slow, sustained elongation of the restriction over, we're talking 5 minutes or more. I know I've seen some people on here who've worked with me before, and you can attest to this. I make you hold it for like what's almost an uncomfortable amount of time. But I do have, again, models in place to help us stay with it so it doesn't feel as long as it actually is. But we're talking 5 to 7 minutes of holding a stretch, which can feel like forever. The other way that we address the restriction is through pressure. Slow, sustained pressure over time does a similar thing to an elongated stretch. There's this piezoelectric phenomenon, or that happens about at the 3 to 5 minute mark, where the tissue goes from a more solid state to a more liquid, viscous like state. And it's about at that 3 to 5 minute mark of holding sustained stretch or pressure. And with pressure, we're using tools like the foam roller, small balls, and some specialty tools, which I actually have listed on my website if you're interested under resources on my website, which I'll show you at the end. So I had mentioned to you that we hold it for an uncomfortable amount of time. I use a model called the zone of control that helps us stay with it. Time element here really is the key, and where you put your mind in those 3 to 5 minutes is bare minimum. So let's say 5 to 7 minutes. Where you put your mind really determines where the energy flows and where the release happens. So I have this great model here. If any of you are already doing myofascial release or any sort of self-treatment techniques on your own, these are key questions I want you to start asking in those 5 to 7 minutes. The first question is, where can I let go while still holding on for support? And I have a feeling that's probably a good question to ask in the embodiment practice that James is going to do in a few moments. Where can I let go while still holding on for support? That is such a beautiful question around balance, okay? Holding on and letting go simultaneously. What is the pressure of the tool or the stretch doing inside of my body? Coming back to that question, almost like meditation, it gives you an anchor point. What is happening in the front, back, above, below, left, and right to either side of the tool or the stretch? So you're really getting into that three-dimensional piece and doing, it's like a body scan, basically, using either the stretch site or the tool as your anchor point or your base point. And then lastly, what changes at the side of the tool or the stretch when I allow my body to start to move, when I'm guided by the release? So around the 5-minute mark, give or take, I start to guide my clients and patients to work with the release because it's three-dimensional and it's starting to go into other parts of the body. So how can you, with your mind, go there as well? So I had mentioned in the beginning to really take into consideration the characteristics of fascia. And if you don't already understand the mind-body connection, or if you do have an understanding of the mind-body connection, I want to deepen that awareness for you now. Emotion goes to the place of greatest restriction in the body. Why that is because the restriction becomes a sponge for that emotion. It's sticky and dehydrated in there, so it holds on to and becomes more susceptible to pain and inflammation. In fact, this is really interesting. I got COVID in April, and I studied the pain patterns of it because I'm obsessed with the body in that way. And what I found was, and I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, what I found was my old chronic pain patterns were coming back up while I had COVID, and then for the first 6 weeks afterwards, which is kind of like the post-COVID symptoms. And it wasn't just physical pain, it was also bringing back up some of the old things that I thought I had resolved, like my gut health issues. Some of that was coming back up. There was also some emotional stuff coming back up. So all of that was coming up from the tissue to be cleared and healed. And when we talk about the tissue, we're really talking about the fascia. And here's a slide here of some different practitioners who study this, right? Who look at the mind-body connection. Maria Corgna studies the relationship between the psyche and how emotions and stressors affect main regulatory systems. So all of that is stored in the fascia. Peter Levine. So anybody who's interested in this, you can kind of start to look up some of these practitioners. Peter Levine created somatic experiencing, which is something a lot of psychotherapists now study around the mind-body connection. He has a great book called Waking the Tiger. Stephen Porges created polyvagal theory. Pat Ogden, she's an occupational therapist like me. She created sensory motor psychotherapy. Resma Manakim is really important to mention here because he works a lot with cultural somatics and looking at how systemic racism shows up in white bodies and Black bodies and police bodies. And so when you kind of look at it from this like inherited generational trauma perspective, it takes a little bit of the charge out of it so we can really start to do our work around it. And then Jean-Pierre Barrel, he is the father of visceral manipulation, which is one of the many methods I practice. He has a great book called Understanding the Messages of the Body. So I normally have something to offer at the end of these things. Here's a workshop I'm doing, here's a free thing I'm doing, but right now I'm not taking new in-person clients, but I am doing one-on-one online sessions. So if any of you are interested in working with me on a one-on-one capacity, we would do 90-minute telehealth sessions. I'm also, this is new, I'm doing something really exciting. I'm doing my first live event since March of 2020. I will be at the Natural Living Expo in Virginia, McLean, Virginia. It's at the Hilton in McLean, Virginia on July 10th. If you're interested in learning more about that, honestly, if you're interested in working with me in general, I recommend getting on my mailing list and I'll send you an announcement for this. Okay, thanks. Let me just share my last PowerPoint. If you are interested in working with me or connecting with me, here are these are the ways to contact me. So go to blueniletherapy.com and you can sign up for my mailing list there, and then you'll get information about my next online event. If you want to talk one-on-one, I have free consultations. We can geek out on this all day. Right, we are about out of time, or I am out of time, so I'll just check the chat really quick and see if there are any questions. Nope, it doesn't look like there is. So I will hand it over to James.
So I think, James, oh, you're muted. Let's go exactly to 3, maybe even a couple of minutes over. I think that's fine. And we're just going to end the moment you end it. And we'll see everybody next Friday.
All right. Thank you, Misha. Thank you, Nyle. So I'm going to lead us up in a Qigong practice today. Hopefully, Jeanette can include my contact details if you have any further questions or you're interested in finding out more. So let's get straight to it. Now, if you are experiencing any health issues, I'd ask you to work gently with yourself. Please don't strain or force. And we're going to be exploring first a shaking practice, and then we'll do a few Qigong movements. All right, so let's find your way to standing. Several of my clients already on the call. So we're going to begin with a standing position. So have your feet together and stretch your fingers down towards the ground. So Qigong is an energy system that comes from ancient Chinese practices. And this first shaking practice comes from a line of shamanic Qigong. We'll be working with all of the connective tissues that Nyle mentioned earlier. But we'll also be tuning in a little bit more to the energetics. So stretch your fingers down towards the ground, lightly engage your toes, place the tongue on the roof of the mouth, lift up through the crown of the head, and feel a gentle drawing up into the pelvic floor. This readies the body. It begins to energize the body. So as Nyle mentioned, the head can often be forward, so bring the head back very slightly. Keep the tongue on the roof of the mouth throughout the practice. Now step out, lift the arms, and lift the heels if you can. So you're balancing on the balls of your feet, and then gently stretch up through the fingertips and open all of your joints. So each joint is enveloped in this fascia that Nyle was describing. So as you stretch up gently, feel all the connective tissues through the body, through your fingers and hands and wrists, through your shoulders and spine, through your hips, knees, ankles, and feet. All the joints open, allowing the energies to flow through the body. Deep breaths. Good. Now very slowly, only lower down as much as you can comfortably. You can bend your knees, keeping the heels off the ground if possible. Lower down, and then you're going to jump and start the shaking. And just let everything shake loose. And we'll do a little bit of a tour, an abridged tour of the body to shake loose all of the structures. And as you shake, you're encouraging energy to flow through the body. You're allowing physical structures to relax, and you're allowing your breath to flow nice and easily. The universe that we're in is a vibrational one, so we're basically matching the vibration within ourselves to that of the universe around us. So first of all, bring your mind to the top of your head, just connecting upwards through the top of the head for a moment, and then bring your fingertips to your eyes. So you're pressing your tear ducts very lightly, and then just circle your eyes around. So gentle circling of the eyes as you press your tear ducts with your index finger and thumb. Keep the shaking going in your body. Change direction with the circling of the eyes. So you're loosening the structures of the eyes a little bit away from their habitual patterning, where we look at screens and driving. So you're kind of freeing the eyes, and at the same time connect to the liver on the right side of your body, which is very, very active in the springtime. Good. And then release, and then bring the fingers to the side of the nose, just at the base of the nose, and circle this point. This is the beginning of the lung meridian. And deep breaths in, and shoot your exhale out in short, sharp bursts. So you're kind of releasing your breath. One more breath. Good, and then release down, massaging your ears. Use your fingertips and your thumbs to awaken your ears. And the ears relate to the kidneys in Chinese medicine. So be aware of your kidneys in your upper lower back area. So just beneath your back ribs, massaging your ears. And then start tapping around the jawline. So use your fingertips, lightly tap around the jaw, up to that third eye area, where the Foulkes connects into the frontal bone, that connective tissue behind the forehead that divides the two hemispheres of the brain, and then all the way up over the top of the head, down the back of the skull, around the ears. And just imagine that with the tapping, you're releasing any tensions from your skull and from your brain. So the tapping begins to stimulate the structures and the energies. Good. And then just sweep off your head. Imagine you could use your hands to sweep off. So one of the ways in which we've been slightly hoodwinked is that we're taught to believe that the body finishes at the skin. And in fact, it does not. The energy extends beyond the edge of the body. So as we're working with the body, we're working with the energies that are both inside and around us. Good. Let's move into the shoulders and the neck. So swirl the shoulders back, releasing any tension and stress from your shoulder girdle, unlocking those fascial patterns of the shoulders that can become very dominant through being dominant with one of our hands. And then move into the neck gently, swirling through the neck, loosening up any patterns in your neck today. So notice what you're noticing. If you feel dizzy, then obviously don't move your neck. Down into the wrists and elbows. So get loose in your elbow joints, loosen your wrists, different kinds of movements of those joints. Get a little bit creative. And then down into your fingers and thumbs. Moving all the joints of the hands. Keep shaking going. Nice deep breaths. Breathing through your nose. Also having a sense of breathing the energy in from around you. Good, and then let the arms hang down, and you might have a tingling sensation in the arms. And then stretch the fingers out wide and open up the chest. So you're drawing the fascia of the deep chest open with your arm position, and feel inside to your lungs and your heart. Obviously, major organs affected by this recent virus. So deep breaths, open right up into your chest. Good, and then release down. And then lightly tapping onto the chest, same way we tapped onto the head earlier. And as you tap, imagine you're sort of drawing out. So you're releasing any stagnancy in your body as you tap, and then onto the heart area with the fingertips, and then work down your belly, gently tapping into your abdomen. You can crisscross the hands around the abdomen, referencing the liver on the right side of the body and the stomach and spleen on the left side of the body. And the large and small intestines through the center, all the way down to your bladder area, to ladies to your womb, and then round to the back of the body to the kidneys. And you can make soft fists and just bounce the knees gently up and down, massaging your lower back. And if you drop your head down slightly, as Nyle was mentioning, there are connectivities between different parts of the body. So as you drop your head, it sort of allows your lower back to protrude slightly, which takes the kidneys slightly closer to the surface, all the way down towards your lower back and your sacrum. So this is a practice that you can do very, very simply, this kind of shaking and tapping and awakening. I've got a version of this on YouTube. If you search for my name on YouTube, there's a shaking practice that you can watch and follow along with. Good, and then release the arms. And let's just turn the spine now. So going in deeper, allowing your spine to rotate. And if it's comfortable, you can turn your neck as well. Get nice and loose with your arms, allowing your arms to lightly strike the body, similar to the tapping we've been doing. Good, and then down from the hips and the pelvis, you can work your way down your legs. So go down the front of the legs, and then up the back of the legs, tapping lightly onto the side of the pelvis, down the outside of the pelvis, to the inside of the foot, and then work up the inside of the leg. Good, and then to your waist and circle your hips a little bit in each direction. Loosening your lower back and your knees, and then rub your knees. Give your knees a rub, front, back, and sides. So all the joints get attended to through this shaking practice. Each joint is enveloped in that connective tissue that Nyle was discussing with us earlier. So the joint is really a connective tissue wrapping for this interaction between bones. And then loosen your ankle joints, wiggle your feet, loosen your ankles, and then tapping the feet onto the ground and feel all the different structures of the feet. Nice deep breaths. Tongue on the roof of the mouth, remember, and be relaxed in your heart as you shake. So no stress. The opposite, we're releasing stress, letting go. And then just spend a minute or two now on your own, just working through your body to anywhere that feels tight for you. So follow your instincts around movement, get creative with your movement, undo any tensions from your body, any movements that feel good for you. So forget the screen for a moment, keep the shaking going and loosen up. You can use tapping or rubbing or shaking or breathing to get into places that feel like they need a little bit of extra care. So 1 more minute freestyle shaking. So I teach a Qigong class every Thursday morning at 11 online, doing some very similar stuff to what we're doing here. I'm also going to be working with Dr. Coben and the Center for Integrated Medicine in the future, often in series through there. So just take this last few moments to really go into your body, deep breaths, and then come to stillness. Close your eyes, stand nice and tall, check that your feet are parallel, soften your knees slightly, and feel the resonance, feel the echo of the shaking. Keep the tongue on the roof of the mouth, stretch the fingers down towards the ground. Release any tension from your body. Feel the buzzing, feel the tingling. This is the energy flowing through you. Feel the heat in some parts of the body. Feel the groundedness through the legs. And feel the lightness up through the spine. Notice any sensations in your body and release any tensions down towards the ground, like water flowing downhill through a stream. Good. Feet together and lift the arms up. So now we're going to do a different kind of Qigong, which is more structured movement. Exhale down the front of the body. So inhale, arms up. Fingertips touch up above the head and exhale. Swallow as the hands pass the face and place the tongue back onto the roof of the mouth. Now follow your breathing. 1 more breath. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a sample of some moves here that you can try on your own. First one is lifting earth. Imagine you're opening a tall window, bend the knees, inhale, and then exhale, lift up, gently stretch, and lift the heels. Good, inhale back to center. So you're opening up the connective tissue matrix again. Feel in the living anatomy changing underneath the surface of the skin. Inhale down, soften the knees. And exhale onto the balls of the feet, stretch up. Good. Release the arms down. Shoulders relax. And the next movement we'll do is called looking at the moon. Make a round shape with your arms. And then we're going to turn up to one side and have the thumbs and the index fingers close together. This is called looking for the moon. So turn to center, arms face you, and then turn across. So it's a gentle rotation of the spine. Bend the knees when you come back to the middle, and then flip your hands as you look over your shoulder. And the mention of the moon in Qigong indicates that there's an aspect of yin in the movement. So it's soft. So it's not a yang hard movement, it's a soft movement. Good. Feet back together. Come back to that first movement we did. Inhale. Exhale gently down the front of the body. Swallow as the hands pass the face. And keep the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, arms down. Shoulders relax. Face relaxed. And this gets the energy moving. And energy moving is part of health. Good. Let's do 2 more movements before we close. Let's come back to that same position of holding the tree. And then we're going to bring the hands in towards you. Then one hand up, one hand down, and then split. So you're stretching the left and the right side. So inhale, gather, condense, split, and distribute. So let's try that a couple of times. Look ahead of you at eye level, forget the screen, and then take one of the arms up and the other one down. One more time on the other side. Inhale, gathering in, condensing your own energy, and then split. Balancing the left and the right side. Good. And then the last movement we'll do, similar to what we did earlier in the shaking, we're just going to massage the kidneys. The kidneys are the batteries of the body. And if we want to have health, we need strong kidney energy. So just drop the chin in slightly and just take a few nice deep breaths here, returning back to the kidneys and that gate of life, fire at the back of the waist, as it's known in Chinese medicine, which is your connection to your ancestral energies. Bouncing the knees softly. One more breath. And then feet together again. And return to this movement. Wuji Wan Qi Fa, bringing good energy inside. Exhale, sinking down. Soft heart, soft face. Find your own breath. 2 more. Exhale. Sinking all the way down. Swallow. And last one. And this time we'll just seal the energies in to our practice. So gentlemen, right hand outside, ladies, left hand outside, non-binary in the center, and just put the hands onto the lower belly, just below your navel. And then just take a moment or 2 to breathe. Just imagine you're gathering everything back in towards the center. Relaxing and breathing. Maybe you feel energized, maybe you feel tingling, maybe you feel heat, maybe an emotion or a feeling has come up. And these practices help to support the energies for many, many different types of physical conditions. All right, excellent work, everybody. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you to Misha for hosting me and Jeanette. And thank you also to Nyle. Hope you enjoyed the practice today.
Thank you, James. This was wonderful. Let's see if there's any questions for you and Nyle, maybe in the last couple of minutes.
I don't know about everybody else, but I love the fact that the wellness talk moved right into our mindful movement, and this was special. Thank you.
Yes, totally agree with that. James, I always find it fascinating that often it's not the timing of the practice in length, but the concentration and the prep that goes into it. And then you can have a very profound shifts in a very brief periods of time.
Very short space of time, exactly. So it's the quality of the attention that we bring that allows the energies to begin to awaken very quickly. And even with not, regardless of your level of experience, that's part of, what happens as you do these practices.
Hi,
And
this is Jada. What did you say about the tongue being at the roof of the mouth? What does that do now?
the tongue on the roof of the mouth closes an internal energy circuit called the microcosmic orbit, which is the main meridians that circulate energy through the body. So it's kind of like when you put the tongue on the roof of the mouth, you take the restrictions out of 495 and the traffic can flow all the way around the city with ease, right? It's like taking out the traffic jam. So when you put the tongue on the roof of the mouth, it gives you a focus point internally, which is very important, but it allows the energy to flow. And this meridian up the back and down the front is the main one that brings vitality and health to the body. It's happening all the time, but we kind of facilitate more ease in that. So thank you, Misha. Misha's posting.
And the YouTube links are off of the website. You just need to click on the resources. Yep.
So my website's www.jamesfoulkes.com, Foulkes. So if you've got any other questions, please feel free to get in touch. Maybe you felt something peculiar in your body. Maybe you felt a lot of energy. And it gives us a vehicle to begin to very, very succinctly support our health.
Yeah, so this couple definitely, that's a powerhouse, especially when they go in this tandem. I hope that that's not the last time. Okay, everybody, if you still have questions, send them after. And we already went a little bit over. Hope everybody is okay with that. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Friday.
Thank you.
Enjoy the weather. Bye.
Bye.